Okay, welcome back, book lovers. Thanks for tuning in to another video. What does it take to escape from one of the most oppressive regimes in the world? For thousands of North Koreans, the journey to freedom is filled with unimaginable risks, treacherous crossings, human traffickers, and the constant fear of being caught and sent back. Today, we're diving into some of the most harrowing and inspiring stories of North Korean defectors and the hidden networks that help them find freedom. So, this is a roundup of non-fiction, so North Korean non-fiction books from the previous decade. So, when I come to each book, I'll tell you which year it was published, and note also the review was written the year these books were published. So, I'm kind of just rounding up some old reviews that I've written in the past of North Korean related books. Also, I am not a North Korean expert by any stretch of the imagination. So these are just my uninformed, I guess, thoughts on each of these books. So the books that we are reviewing, okay, the books that we're reviewing are, hold on. So these are the books that we're reviewing today. Hopefully you can see all of those. And so most of these reviews were written for magazines or journals or whatever at the time. So anyway, let's go through them one by one. Hold on, I need to drink some tea. Alrighty, okay, so let's start by looking at one of the most comprehensive books on the North Korean defector experience, one that reveals the hidden escape routes and the people who risk their lives to help refugees. So, one of the most harrowing aspects of North Korean escape stories is the dangerous journey through China. Melanie Kirkpatrick's escape from North Korea is all about is a deep investigation into the underground railroad that helps defectors find freedom. So let's take a closer look. So Melanie Kirkpatrick is a former deputy editor of the Wall Street Journal. And she has written a powerful and meticulously researched book, Escape from North Korea, The Untold Story of Asia's Underground Railroad. And it's about the desperate plight of North Korean refugees who attempt to escape their homeland by crossing the border into China. Kirkpatrick describes the arduous and often hazardous route these refugees must take to cross China to reach freedom in South Korea or elsewhere. And she draws a parallel between the African American slaves in America 150 years ago who used an underground railroad consisting of hidden paths and secret safe houses to escape slavery, and the North Korean refugees attempting to flee through China. So, this new underground railroad starts at the North Korean border and takes several routes through China to various third countries. So, and these include Myanmar, Mongolia, and for many, ultimately, South Korea. And it comprises a loose network of Christian missionaries, humanitarian aid workers, people traffickers, and dubious brokers who will help, but for often exorbitant fees. The North Koreans who travel the Underground Railroad are fleeing a different kind of slavery. They're escaping from the world's perhaps most unbending totalitarian political system. Kim Jong-un's North Korea is, like his father and grandfathers before him, as Kirkpatrick argues, a modern day slave state in which fundamental human rights, such as the freedoms of speech, movement, and religion, are almost entirely denied. Several well known escapees have successfully traveled the Underground Railroad. They include Shin Dong-hyuk, a young man who was born inside one of North Korea's notorious political prison camps, who escaped to South Korea despite having almost no knowledge of the outside world. Shin Dong-hyuk's inhumane upbringing was detailed in Blaine Hardin's book Escape from Camp 14. More about that later. There are also South Korean prisoners of war like Yoo Yong-bok, who made the journey and who recounted his story in an autobiography entitled Tears of Blood. Mr. Yu had been a prisoner of war for 50 years, before, at 70 years of age, he crossed the Tumen River in a small boat to begin his journey on the railroad. He too eventually found safety in South Korea. However, there are many other men, women, and children whose stories are less celebrated and who also made the journey in search of food and happiness. Joseph Kim was a teenager who chose the auspicious date of Kim Jong-il's birthday to escape by desperately running to the Tumen River and wading across. All his family members had either died of starvation or disappeared without a trace. His escape was motivated simply by hunger. He was lucky as he staggered into a small Chinese village on the other side of the river. He was told to find a church, and from there his journey on the Underground Railroad began. Whereas Joseph was motivated by hunger, Kim Jong-un, a celebrated concert pianist in his homeland, was motivated by the desire to play music. The regime had forbidden him from playing jazz music. He paid a broker to take him to China and worked there for a year in several menial jobs. He was eventually caught trying to use a forged South Korean passport to leave the country and put in a Chinese jail. As the Chinese authorities were transporting him back to North Korea, he escaped by leaping from a moving train, and eventually he too made it to South Korea. Many are not so lucky. Kirkpatrick highlights the vulnerability and exploitation that North Korean women, in particular, often experience. Some brokers prey on and manipulate female refugees into prostitution or forced marriages with Chinese farmers by threatening to turn them over to authorities. These women, even those who marry Chinese farmers, have essentially no rights in the eyes of Chinese law and are often given to the authorities if they fail to satisfy their husbands or their handlers. The plight of children conceived from these forced marriages is also terrible. The so called half and half children that result from such unions are often refused citizenship, denied an education, deprived of medical support, and regularly abandoned or separated from mothers who are repatriated to North Korea. Some of the most awful stories contained in the book concern the punishments suffered by North Korean women who are repatriated to North Korea and discovered to be pregnant by Chinese men. Most are given violent, forced abortions. Kirkpatrick describes one story of a heavily pregnant woman who was forced to run in a circle until she collapsed and had a miscarriage. The conductors who help refugees along the Underground Railroad, be they Christian missionaries, unscrupulous brokers, or humanitarian aid workers, also risk their well being, even in some cases, their lives, and likely face imprisonment if Chinese police or North Korean agents catch them. The road is dangerous for everyone involved. Despite these dangers, around 20,000 have made the journey in the 10 years before this book was published. There's no way of knowing how many North Koreans remain in China, either too scared to take their chances on the railroad or simply unaware of its existence. Much scorn is directed at the policies of the Chinese, American, and South Korean governments towards the North Korean refugees. Most of Kirkpatrick's anger is, however, directed at the Chinese policies that make the railroad so dangerous for prospective passengers. She strongly criticizes the Chinese government's much condemned policy of not recognizing North Koreans as political refugees and their policy of forced repatriation. Further criticism is leveled at the Chinese authorities who enable the trafficking of female refugees, who are often powerless to resist brokers and traders. Fears are mounting that Kim Jong un has made efforts to stem the tide of escapees by issuing shoot to kill orders to the guards along the Tumen River. There has been a significant decline in the number of refugees who have entered China in the months leading up to the book's publication, prompting growing concern from the humanitarian groups in the region. As such, Melanie Kirkpatrick's book is a wake up call that seeks to shine a light on egregious human rights violations that are becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Excuse me. So let's move on. While some defectors escape as young adults, others endure decades of hardship before making their journey to freedom. Yu Yongbok's Tears of Blood tells the heartbreaking story of a man who spent 50 years as a prisoner of war before finally escaping. And I used to have a copy of this book when I was putting my script together for this section. However, I couldn't find it. So I suspect that I loaned this book to somebody, can't remember who, or maybe I lost it moving house or something. But anyway, it's very annoying because this was a sort of independently published book. It was like a small press publishing. So I think it'd be very difficult to get a replacement copy of it. So a little bit annoying. But anyway, Tears of Blood tells the remarkable story of Yu Yongbok, so the eldest son of a family torn apart in the aftermath of the Korean War. For most of his adult life, Mr. Yu was separated from his father and sister. He was finally reunited with them in South Korea after almost 50 years, when in 2000 he escaped from North Korea as a 70-year-old man. So, Tears of Blood is a moving eyewitness account that takes the reader inside the painful history of North and South Korea in the second half of the 20th century. Mr. Yu's life story embodies the human cost of the division of Korea after the Korean War. In simple, spare, yet honest language, he carefully details the many abuses he suffered as a prisoner of war for 50 years inside North Korea. Alongside approximately 60,000 other South Korean prisoners of war, he was denied repatriation, exploited as a laborer, constantly monitored, forced to endure self criticism sessions, and suffered from tuberculosis and famine. Even amidst the awful conditions, he describes his overwhelming humanity and commitment to his family and loved ones shine through. The title, Tears of Blood, is a Korean saying used when witnessing the pain of loved ones. His story is ultimately a moving testament to the human capacity for hope. It reveals how the historical forces beyond our control can shape a life. There's a second inspiring, hopeful story behind this clear and precise English translation. The translator, Paul T. Kim, was a 16-year-old Korean American high school student. He was on holiday in Seoul, visiting his grandparents, when his grandmother introduced him to Mr. Yu's Korean language autobiography. In the introduction, he describes how he felt that it must be translated for an international audience. And I think he is correct. This is a story that needs to be heard. So if you're interested in the history of Korea or the history of human rights, then this is an essential text that deserves to be read by many people. And so if we move on to our next book, Victor Cha's The Impossible State, North Korea Past and Future. So again, this was from 2012. So it might be a little out of date. But anyway, so beyond individual escape stories, understanding North Korea requires looking at its political landscape. Victor Cha's The Impossible State breaks down the country's inner workings, human rights abuses, and what the future may hold. So bear in mind, this book is over a decade old now, so it's interesting to see some of Victor's predictions did not come true. So it was at the time, an exhaustively researched, provocative examination of the social, economic, and political realities of North Korea. So Cha is a celebrated Georgetown University scholar. He was also the director for Asian Affairs in the White House's National Security Council during the George W. Bush administration, and was a deputy head of the US delegation to the six-party talks. As such, this quite a chunky book is a rich, captivating blend of personal anecdotes and sustained political analysis from the perspective of a well-placed insider who often had a ringside seat to some of the most important geopolitical events affecting North Korea. Cha starts by detailing the historical narrative, expounding on the Cold War years when, under the fluctuating patronage of China and the Soviet Union, North Korea was relatively more prosperous than it is currently. Cha moves on to chart a litany of human rights abuses, humanitarian disasters, and terrorist actions. The devastating famine of the 1990s, brutal penal camps, tortured prisoners, international kidnappings, and assassination attempts. The role of the state's criminal enterprises and activities in narcotics and illegal arms sales is also discussed in some detail. A particularly fascinating section of the book is Cha's account of the often fraught, frequently tense six-party talks on the issue of North Korean denuclearization. Cha's central thesis is that the North will inevitably collapse and be reunified with prosperous democratic South Korea. He even argues that there is an increased hunger in the South for realistic reunification preparations. The North's current position, especially after the problematic and ill-prepared succession of Kim Jong-un, is largely untenable. Kim Jong-un, Cha argues, needs reform to survive, but the process of opening up will undeniably lead to the end of his political control. And so the regime is essentially caught between a rock and a hard place. Some would challenge this thesis, but Cha makes well, at the time it was a persuasive argument. The book's only, or one of its flaws, is that it is perhaps unavoidably, given Cha's position, almost entirely American-centric. And Cha is seemingly an unashamed cheerleader for George W. Bush's policy towards North Korea. But despite these drawbacks, The Impossible State is nevertheless a major work, and it still has a lot of interesting information. But clearly, some of Cha's predictions haven't come true, or at least they certainly haven't come true yet. Sorry, let me drink my tea. Okay, so let's move on to 2014, and this is Chang Jin-sung's Dear Leader. So most defector memoirs, let me just quickly check everything is... Okay, everything looks okay. All right, so most defector memoirs focus on ordinary Koreans struggling to survive. But Dear Leader is different. So it's written by a man who was once part of Kim Jong-il's inner circle. So let's explore what this book reveals about life among North Korea's elite. So former North Korean poet and propagandist Jang Jin-sung, his Dear Leader, appears to make a significant contribution to our understanding of the upper echelons of North Korean society. Whereas the majority of defector memoirs usually detail the awful poverty and starvation that seemingly blight the lives of millions of North Koreans, Jang lived in relative opulence as one of Kim Jong-il's admitted, an elite group of high-level party workers and officials provided with special weekly food rations and sheltered from many of the worst aspects of the totalitarian police state. Writing from the unique perspective of a highly privileged life in Pyongyang, Chang reveals the fascinating, often surprising inner workings and machinations of Kim Jong-il's regime. Chang was a relatively young 27-year-old when he began his rapid ascent through party ranks. Tasked with writing an epic poem that eulogized the achievements of Kim Jong-il, and that could also be used as psychological warfare against the South, Chang composed Spring Rests on the Gun Barrel of the Lord. Kim Jong-il apparently loved the result, and Chang was invited to an auspicious meeting with the diminutive supreme leader, sealing his place as one of the admitted. Chang's work as a poet and propagandist in a near-secret bureau responsible for inter-Korean espionage, the United Front Department, brought him into direct contact with South Korean culture. His job was to create fake South Korean poetry praising North Korea and Kim Jong-il. To mimic the style of South Korean poetry, he was given access to South Korean literature, newspapers, and history books, items the majority of his countrymen would be severely punished for possessing. As his exposure to these documents grew, he describes becoming increasingly jaded by and disillusioned with the North Korean regime. Chang was eventually forced to flee the country when he lost some restricted documents, and it became apparent that he had been sharing controversial material with his friends. Dear Leader's structure works well as it cuts back and forth between a terrifying month spent hiding and evading authorities in China and his reflections on a previously gilded life in Pyongyang. Chang has many fascinating insights to offer on both experiences. Some of the most interesting revelations concern the North Korean sunshine exploitation view of Kim Dae-jung's sunshine policy, with Jang claiming Kim Jong-il orchestrated a series of navy attacks to exploit as much money as possible from the South Korean administration. There are yet more compelling revelations regarding the nature of the succession from Kim Il sung to Kim Jong il. Chang claims that younger Kim, in actual fact, wrested power away from his father. Whether you're an experienced North Korean watcher or merely a curious reader, Dear Leader is more than worth your time. Oh dear, okay. So, okay, let's move. This is another 2014 book. This is Without You, There Is No Us by Suki Kim. So, what about the future leaders of North Korea? What are they taught? Suki Kim went undercover to teach the sons of North Korea's elite at Pyongyang University. Her memoir, Without You, There Is No Us, gives a rare glimpse inside their world. So, Suki Kim has written several articles and now this memoir about teaching in North Korea. Without You, There Is No Us charts Kim's 6 months or 2 semesters teaching at Pyongyang University of Science and Technology in 2011. It provides a compelling look at a section of North Korean society that external media rarely, if ever, has access to: the children of North Korea's rich and powerful. Kim writes that she came to care deeply for the 19 to 20-year-old male students she was teaching, while becoming increasingly disturbed by their propensity to lie and utterly misguided understanding of the wider world. Her memoir goes some way towards revealing the effects that North Korea's extreme control of information has on these young minds who are baffled by the internet and stare blankly at computer screens, almost unable to accept that a wider world does indeed exist. Kim's 6 months at PUST were fraught with tension as she risked discovery as an undercover journalist. But it was a risk worth taking for this insight into the next generation of potential North Korean leaders. So let's move on to a 2015 book. This is Paul Fisher's A Kim Jong-il production. So this is one of the most bizarre true stories of North Korea. So a dictator's obsession with cinema, a daring kidnapping, and forced filmmaking. A Kim Jong-il production tells a story so surreal that you won't believe it actually happened. So, this is a Kim Jong-il production by Paul Fisher, is a book that blends politics, history, and cinema into a gripping story of abduction, survival, and the power of storytelling. So, buckle up because we're about to explore how a dictator's obsession with movies led to the audacious kidnapping of 2 South Korean film legends. So, this stranger than fiction account chronicles the harrowing true tale of 2 South Korean film icons, Shin Sang-ok and Chae Eun-hee, who were kidnapped and smuggled into North Korea under the direct orders of Kim Jong-il, the eccentric dictator with a cinematic obsession. So during the 1950s and 1960s, Shin and Chae were South Korea's golden couple, perhaps comparable to the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie of their era. Oh, I think they've split up now, right? I don't know. Shin Sang-ok was a brash, visionary director with an impressive ability to churn out blockbuster films, while Chae Eun-hee was a celebrated actress adored by millions. Together, they dominated the South Korean film industry, creating an enviable legacy of both commercial hits and critical successes. Yet behind their glamorous image lay personal turmoil. Che had fled an abusive first marriage to be with Shin, only to find herself betrayed by his numerous infidelities. Their relationship eventually disintegrated, leaving behind not just personal scars, but professional ones too, as their careers faltered in tandem. However, unbeknownst to them, they had a fan lurking across the demilitarized zone. Kim Jong-il, North Korea's future leader and a self-proclaimed cinephile. Fascinated by the power of film as a propaganda tool, Kim harbored dreams of elevating North Korea's stagnant film industry into a globally recognized cinematic powerhouse. He envisioned producing films that would mesmerize audiences beyond the Hermit Kingdom, garner critical acclaim, and perhaps even win international awards. But Kim lacked one crucial ingredient: talent. In an audacious plot that defied belief, Kim ordered the abduction of both Shin and Che in 1978. Lured separately to Hong Kong under false pretenses, they were kidnapped and forcibly taken to Pyongyang. Thus began one of the most surreal chapters in cinematic history, as Fisher vividly recounts. In North Korea, Shin and Che found themselves in an Orwellian nightmare, coerced into revitalizing the country's moribund film industry under Kim's ever watchful eye. The book details their life in captivity, from Shin's imprisonment and re education to Che's uneasy acclimatization to a gilded cage where they were subjected to Kim's erratic whims. Fisher's narrative is peppered with moments so surreal they could only occur under a totalitarian regime obsessed with appearances. Among these are elaborate, garish parties thrown by Kim, peculiar anecdotes about his obsession with Western cinema, and the production of Pulgasari, a Godzilla like monster film that bizarrely blends kaiju fantasy with communist ideology. Shin and Che's story isn't without moments of incredible tension, including multiple escape attempts, one of which resulted in Shin being thrown into a prison camp where he was subjected to psychological and physical torture. Despite the bleakness of their ordeal, a Kim Jong il production also highlights the resilience of the human spirit. Fisher masterfully balances the dark humor inherent in the absurdity of Kim's cinematic ambitions with the genuine pathos of Shin and Che's plight. Their ultimate escape, engineered through cunning and bravery, feels almost cinematic in itself, a fitting end to a tale about the power of storytelling. Beyond the sensationalism of its premise, Fisher's book offers readers a fascinating lens into life behind the Iron Curtain of North Korea. It delves into the cultural and political climate of the Hermit Kingdom during the late 20th century, shedding light on the peculiar intersection of art and authoritarianism. The book also raises profound questions about the purpose of art. Can it exist purely for propaganda, or is its value tied to freedom of expression? In the end, a Kim Jong il production is not just an engrossing read for fans of true crime or political history, it's a compelling story about art, power, and human resilience. With its gripping narrative, well researched background, and moments of surreal absurdity, this book is an extraordinary exploration of an extraordinary episode in cinematic history. This book isn't just for fans of political history or cinema, it's for anyone interested in how art can be weaponized by those in power. It's a reminder that storytelling is a powerful tool capable of shaping reality and ideology. And Shin and Che's eventual escape, a real life plot twist, underscores the triumph of human spirit over tyranny. So if you're looking for a book that blends thriller-like suspense with real-world history, a Kim Jong-il production is a must-read. So let's move on to another book written in 2015. So this one here. So this is North Korea Confidential, Private Markets, Fashion Trends, Prison Camps, Dissenters, and Defectors. And it was written by Daniel Tudor and James Pearson. So while many books focus on the state's brutality, what about everyday life in North Korea? North Korea Confidential explores black markets, fashion trends, and the underground culture that is reshaping the country from within. So Tudor and Pearson's book, North Korea Confidential, seeks to investigate many of the popular misconceptions and myths that have sprung up around North Korea, still one of the most reclusive countries on the planet. One of their central goals is to cut through the usual hyperbole and rhetoric one often encounters when reading about North Korea to present more of a rounded picture of the actual day-to-day life of ordinary citizens there. In asking what life is generally like for regular North Korean citizens, they come to several surprising and illuminating conclusions. Their core argument is that the devastating famines experienced by the country during the 1990s, coupled with the North Korean government's arduous March policy and a significant decrease in aid from long-term benefactor Russia, led to a series of highly significant social and economic changes. They reason that after the calamities of the 90s, during which time the North Korean government essentially relinquished responsibility for feeding its people, private informal markets began to emerge. Markets which now play an increasingly important role in the country's social life. They memorably liken this new style of private trade to Victorian Britain's attitude to sex. While everybody does it, few publicly admit to its existence. The book comprises 7 fascinating chapters, each of which explores a specific aspect of contemporary North Korean life. Each chapter is packed full of insightful analysis and compelling nuggets of information, from the popularity of South Korean style eyelid surgery, often performed by privately trained citizens, to the fashion for fake clothes styled after South Korean stars, the abundance of smuggled films and pornography stored on illegal flash drives, illegal cell phones that can call outside the country, the market for comic books, and many, many more. Not since Barbara Demick's Nothing to Envy has there been such a compelling street-level view of life in North Korea. Pearson and Tudor's book is a highly rewarding read for anyone with even a passing interest in North Korea. And let's move on to a 2018 book. And so again, I can't find my copy of this book either. I don't know what happened to it, so maybe I loaned this to someone as well. But Han Song-ju's On the Brink, A Korean Diplomat's Journey for Peace, was published in 2018. So this is a different perspective. This is a look at diplomacy. Former South Korean Foreign Minister Hang Sung-ju's On the Brink provides an inside view of negotiations with North Korea and the high-stakes world of international diplomacy. Sorry, excuse me. So this is a fascinating memoir. Like I said, it offers a first-hand account of South Korea's diplomatic challenges over the past several decades. So Han, a highly respected diplomat and academic, served as South Korea's Minister of Foreign Affairs during a critical period in the early 1990s. Facing major challenges like North Korea's withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, strained relations with Japan over historical disputes, and the controversial opening of South Korea's agricultural markets. Later, as South Korea's ambassador to the United States under President Roh Moo-hyun, he worked to maintain stable US-Korea relations despite differences in policy toward North Korea. His early experiences surviving the Korean War, studying in the US, and witnessing the April Revolution shaped his worldview and commitment to diplomacy. This book provides valuable insights into Korean history, international relations, and the delicate art of diplomacy, making it a must read for those interested in global affairs, political history, and the life of a diplomat navigating high stakes negotiations. And so the final thing that I want to review today is actually it was like a photography and art exhibition back from 2012, which also includes mention of two other memoirs. So the exhibition was called "Where Love Does Not Exist." So one of the darkest aspects of North Korea. Let me just check this is okay. Yeah. So, one of the darkest aspects of North Korea is its system of political prison camps. An exhibition titled Where Love Does Not Exist exposes the brutal reality of these camps through survivor testimony and shocking illustrations. So, in 2008, a group of students from Handong Global University in Korea started a club. The club was a kind of extracurricular study group for a mixed bunch of students from a variety of academic disciplines. Initially, they read about economics and international relations, but they also read about North Korea and, in particular, about the abuses of human rights there. This led them in 2010 to form a group to promote human rights in North Korea. The group named itself SAGE after the English meaning of wise man and scholar, but also because SAGE in Korean is an abbreviation for wisdom of Jesus Christ to overcome the world. So the group's first major event was an exhibition originally displayed in Handong Global University entitled Where Love Does Not Exist, the subject being North Korean political prison camps. So the exhibition was expanded and moved to Seoul, where it completed runs in the Ghana Art Space and Insadong and was displayed at galleries in Samcheongdong and in Yeouido. The exhibition's title is derived from a statement by Shin Dong-hyuk, a North Korean defector. He said, "I never heard the words love, bliss, pleasant misfortune, injustice, resistance, and only discovered the meanings of these words in South Korea. These words are words that do not exist in prison camps." And so Shin Dong-hyuk wrote a memoir called Escape from Camp 14. Yeah, so Where Love Does Not Exist consists primarily of photographs, films, posters, literature, and striking illustrations depicting the egregious human rights abuses that regularly occur in political prison camps. The pictures show a litany of abuses, human degradation, and torture. Due to the lack of photographic evidence to record the inner workings of the political prison camps, the illustrations are particularly significant documents. Each illustration, all of which were made by a former PPC detainee, details the harsh and inhumane living conditions the prisoners are forced to endure. In one picture, hanged on the wall, the image of two prisoners, their bodies malnourished and emaciated, hang from a wall as a form of punishment. In another, called Forced Abortion, two prisoners are forced at gunpoint to stand on a pregnant woman. For many viewers, this treatment of an unborn child is the most extreme example of a human rights abuse. It is not the only such depiction. The illustration entitled Who Gave Them the Right to Take Lives depicts the following incident. In the Sugol Valley, prisoners are secretly executed. In the fall of 1989, a prison guard, having discovered that a female prisoner was pregnant with another guard's child, knifed open the woman's womb, took out the unborn baby, and trampled the baby to death. This brutality is indicative of the total lack of value placed on human life within the camps. The prisoners have no value other than as slave labor and are treated as disposable objects. A third illustration, Human Eating Dog, highlights the guards' lack of concern for the humanity of their prisoners. In May 1998, two middle school girls, 13 years old, who were prisoners in the camp, were eaten by the prison guard dog on their way home from school. The images are shocking and transgressive, and the cumulative effect of the material gathered in the exhibition is very powerful. It makes it frighteningly clear that the North Korean political prison camps are the antithesis of the values enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The term North Korean political prison camp generally stands for political penal labor colonies, of which there are currently 6 in operation at the time of the exhibition. They are operated by the North Korean National Security Agency, and if the statistics from recent government reporting are to be believed, approximately 154,000 individuals were remanded in one of the 6 camps. The camps serve to isolate political prisoners, along with 2 or 3 generations of their families from the rest of North Korean society. Those deemed to be political enemies of the state, including capitalists, anti-communists, Christians, and of course defectors. The punishment meted out for these ideological crimes is forced physical labor, often until death. The term political prison camp is actually a South Korean name. In North Korea, the camps are alternatively referred to as Kwanlee-so or the Complete Control District, and they were first created in 1947. One camp called Yodok is actually split into 2 sections. There's a Complete Control District for prisoners who are to be imprisoned for life, and a revolutionizing district from which prisoners can eventually be released if they are considered to have been ideologically rehabilitated. In the revolutionizing district, prisoners are educated on the ideologies of Kim Il sung and Kim Jong-il. The Yodok camp is memorably described by Kang Chol-hwan in his memoir The Aquarians of Pyongyang, 10 Years in the North Korean Gulag. Imprisoned as an 8-year-old with his family, Kang Chol-hwan spent 10 years in Yodok before being released and eventually escaping to South Korea. He describes a life of hardship and cruelty, of near starvation and suffering. The stories of life in the camp he recounts in his memoir are echoed by the scenes depicted in the exhibition's illustrations and photographs. Disposing of corpses, solitary confinement, malnutrition, and forced labor all feature in both. Along with the illustrations depicting life in the camps, the exhibition also makes available literature written about them, including a survey report on political prisoners' camps in North Korea by the National Human Rights Commission of Korea. The report covers a wealth of information regarding the nature of the camps. The report argues that the political prisoners' camps in North Korea represent a core issue of human rights violations in North Korea. PPCs represent the most serious violations of human rights, perhaps unparalleled in world history in terms of the number of victims, the nature of processes leading to detention, the length of time the length and time of the camp's existence, charges against the detainees, and the horrendous living conditions. Indeed, it is difficult to comprehend the deprivation suffered by detainees. How does one rationalize a system which only socializes human beings to act as slaves? For this is what happens to those children detained along with their parents and those unfortunate enough to actually be born inside a camp. So, it is a life described by Shin Dong-hyuk, so a former prisoner of the 14th Gechon Complete Control Zone camp. In his memoir, he says, I was born in a political prison camp and lived for 24 years without knowing who Kim Il sung and Kim Jong-il were. Socialized with the bare minimum of words and emotions to perform addition and subtraction and to follow work instructions, we were bred under physical violence as laboring slaves. For a nation state to treat its people in this manner is a violation of any number of fundamental human rights. Article 4 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, "No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms." Article 5 states that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. Clearly, the lives of prisoners in the North Korean PPCs violate these two principles. Historically, little information regarding the camps has reached the rest of the world due to the amount of control and strict operation of the facilities. However, their existence is now without doubt, and their near secret and decades long history is being increasingly brought into the light and revealed. It is exhibitions like Where Love Does Not Exist and other campaigners that have helped draw the wider public's attention to the issue. That the nature of the camps contravenes international human rights is without doubt. The National Human Rights Commission of Korea has estimated that approximately 200,000 prisoners, including women and children, have been or are currently detained in a political prison camp. And the vast majority of those are held without reference to any judicial process. In many cases, the prisoners are the family members of primary offenders. They are held without being informed of the charges against them, sent to maximum security camps, and have to work hard labor for life in the most appalling conditions. The lack of judicial process is also in direct contravention of international human rights law. The families of the prisoners are subject to having all their property confiscated and are forced to live a life of hopelessness in the camp until their final breath without freedom or supply of the minimum necessities of life. Regarding the human rights situation during the detention period, the living conditions in the high security camps are more or less the same as the maximum security camps. The only exception is the fact that prisoners in high security camps nurture the hope of release someday, provided they are submissive and are able to survive the severity of camp life. Like the survey report, the exhibition ultimately seeks to confront the reality of the camps. However, the exhibition seems able to do something the report cannot, and that is to display the reality of the camps to the South Korean public in an emotionally resonant way. It is perhaps unusual for such an exhibition to be displayed in the art galleries of Insadong and Samcheongdong. However, the number of visitors indicates that the public is hungry for information on the internal workings of North Korean prison camps. There is a sign in the exhibition space encouraging viewers to take photographs. At least one spectator was amazed at the number of young South Koreans taking pictures with their mobile phones of the various exhibits. This is a seemingly encouraging development. Indeed, the exhibition organizers hope that their group, SAGE, represents a new incarnation of the North Korean human rights movement, a new model that is more emblematic of the youthful ideals hopefully held by students nationwide. One of the planners, Im Soo-ka, a senior industrial design major at Handong Global University, expressed their intention in mounting the exhibition. We planned this exhibition believing that it was our responsibility and duty as a generation preparing for reunification and as youths who carry the identities of intellectuals, university students, South Korea, and the Korean Peninsula at large. I hope the exhibition will provide youths of the Republic of Korea with a newfound perspective regarding North Korea and an opportunity to empathize with them. The issue of North Korean PPCs is a serious one that deserves more attention from the world's media and should be higher on the international agenda. The existence is a crime against humanity. The survey concludes that, thus, it is believed that the PPCs have become the definitive case of serious violations of human rights in terms of the absence of judicial process, the system of application of guilt by association to the families, violation of the right to survival, forced hard labor, and all aspects of extremely harsh life in the camp during detention. All the conditions listed above are in serious violation of international human rights instruments that North Korea has signed. Accordingly, the issue of the PPC is a case of utmost urgency and constitutes the very barometer of the human rights situations in North Korea. So, from escape stories to political analysis, each of these books reveals a different side of North Korea. Together, they paint a picture of a country struggling under dictatorship, but also of resilience, survival, and hope. So, what do you think? Should more be done to help North Korean defectors? Have you read any of these books or stories? So please leave a comment if you've got anything to ask or to say. And don't forget to like the video if you found any of these stories compelling. Subscribe for more in-depth discussions on Korean literature and history, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. And as always, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.